So last year I reviewed Dave Filoni's Clone Wars, what I liked about it and what I didn't like about it. Today we're going to talk about Genndy Tartakovsky's Clone Wars, the Clone Wars that came out before Filoni's Clone Wars. I just reviewed all of these episodes, I think it was late last year, and I have a ton of notes to give on why I think this is a superior series. Now, a lot of you have asked me about what I thought about Genndy Tartakovsky's series, and a lot of you have different opinions. A lot of you like Filoni's Clone Wars better. Some of you, of course, like Genndy Tartakovsky's Clone Wars. So I'm here to tell you why I like Genndy Tartakovsky's Clone Wars better and why I think it fits more in line with the essence of Star Wars. When it first came out years ago, I remember getting all excited about it. I didn't know who Genndy Tartakovsky was. I know he did a show called Samurai Jack. I never saw it. I still haven't seen it to this day. But looking at just the artwork there, I was like, ugh, this is the guy that's going to do a Clone Wars cartoon? Is it even going to be good? You know, I had my doubts. And then that first episode came on. I think it was just like 3 minutes long. And it was basically Yoda. And just a minor little battle. We don't even know what battle it was, I don't think, in the Clone Wars. And after it's all over, you're like, well, whoa. What did I just see? I know I was like that. I was like, okay, I am intrigued. Show me more. And so every week after that, we got another little glimpse at what was going on during the Clone Wars. And that's one of the beautiful things about this series. It didn't have epic four-part story arcs, you know, well, besides, I guess, the Battle of Coruscant. That would be the biggest battle they ever featured there. But other than that, though, it didn't feature these big moments within the Clone Wars like super Star Destroyers or whatever it was from General Grievous' ship. It didn't feature, you know, this planet, well, if this planet falls, all is lost, you know, which is what Dave Filoni's Clone Wars had, these, you know, everything's hanging in the balance moments. And it seemed like Genndy Tartakovsky's Clone Wars took a smaller approach. Like in different places around the galaxy, you got to see little glimpses of what was going on. And I liked that. Now, of course, I'm not going to talk much about the artwork because I think it's beautiful. I think it's wonderful. A lot of other reviews I've read about it have said the same thing. They really like Genndy Tartakovsky's artwork. But I do like how they focused on smaller events within this Clone Wars. And there's a lot of good episodes. I remember the first episode that really got me thinking, wow, this is something new and different, was the Mace Windu episode. There is actually no talking in this. It's just action. And after watching that, I remember we had them recorded on VHS. Yes, that's how old we are. VHS. And we would rewind, watch it again, rewind, watch it again. That to me was just an amazing episode. I had never seen that in comic books or read about it in the books. And yeah, a Jedi's powerful without his lightsaber. All he needs is his hand, especially for Mace Windu, right? And that to me just blew my mind. I said, what am I seeing here? I'm seeing something that I don't think anyone has ever thought of before. It makes sense that it works, but that they thought about it. That, I want to say that's my favorite episode, but it's not. There's a billion episodes who are all tied for #1. I can't begin to tell you which ones, I couldn't put them in order. Could not put them in descending order. But definitely that Mace Windu episode, I remember thinking, whoa, this is legit. This is something different. This is something new. You know, I was already intrigued beforehand, but now totally invested. I was like, yeah, this is a great series, just on that one episode. Because think about what it did. Besides showing us all the cool things that Jedi can do without lightsabers, it also showed us how powerful Mace Windu was. Now, if you recall, in the Dave Filoni's Clone Wars, Mace Windu wasn't featured that much in it. When he was, he didn't do anything that amazing like he did in Tartakovsky's Clone Wars. So if you were watching, again, if you were watching these in chronological order, I know you'd watch the movies first, then go back and watch the Clone Wars. But if you did watch, you know, we're showing someone in chronological order, I think if you saw Filoni's Clone Wars, and when you see Mace Windu, you'd be like, okay, yeah, he's Master Jedi, okay, we know. I think it would make more sense if you watched Tartakovsky's Clone Wars and you said, whoa, that's Mace Windu. I know what that guy can do. And so it doesn't surprise you that he can go toe-to-toe with Sidious, right, in a lightsaber battle and even beat him. I mean, this guy can defeat a whole droid army. Yeah, I believe he can go after the Sith Lord like that now. I felt that they built Mace Windu's character, well, complemented is what I should say, because the character was already built by that point, but it complemented the movies. And that's what a Clone Wars TV show, in my opinion, should do, is complement the movies which it spun off of. Speaking of characters. Ventress is another one that I think was just wonderfully done. Remember, this is how she was introduced to us. She's in this gladiator arena. There's all these, menacing, barbarians and thugs and whatnot, and she just easily takes them out, one after the other. Now, that's really cool, and that's an awesome scene. But you know what's really awesome that a lot of us forgot? Is that when she goes to Dooku's, office and approaches him, as the champion of them all, I am worthy, what happens? She goes to attack him, right? Dooku goads her and she attacks, and Dooku easily dismantles her. I mean, just boom. Like, okay, you think you're hot snot because you beat all those barbarians, but guess what? I'm Count Dooku. Boom, shut her down. We do not see Count Dooku that powerful in Filoni's Clone Wars. We see him captured by space pirates, but we do not see Dooku. Dooku in Tartakovsky's Clone Wars is very menacing, he's very powerful, and that complements his character in Episode 3. Because already we're like, uh-oh, here they go again, and man, that dude is powerful. He shut Ventress down, and Ventress kicked all sorts of booty in that arena. So I know that Dooku is bad mamma jamma. You don't get that in Filoni's Clone Wars. You think, okay, here's this guy who's gotten beaten a billion times. He's lost to Anakin several times, Obi-Wan several times. He's even fought them twice already. So this is actually the third time in Clone Wars, I'm sorry, the Revenge of the Sith, that they're fighting again. If it's, if you're watching this in chronological order, you're not really that invested in Episode 3. I don't think I'd be at the opening scene. But if you're watching Tartakovsky's Clone Wars instead, you're like, whoa, this is good. I'm excited. Dooku was kept menacing. He was respectfully kept as a top-tier villain, which I feel wasn't the case in Filoni's Clone Wars. That's another thing that Tartakovsky did well. And speaking of Ventress, I'm still not done with her. There's another episode that a lot of people talk about for a lot of good reasons. It's the episode where she fights Anakin. Yes, that is a wonderful episode. I love it. Did you notice there's hardly any dialogue, though? There's no dialogue, hardly. It's just the scenes and the sounds, and that's all you get. You get that they hate each other. There's no witty banter back and forth that you would have in the Clone Wars. There's always a need for witty banter. But in this case, Genndy Tartakovsky tells us a story with virtually no words. Ventress. She wants to prove herself to Dooku. She wants to take down this little twerp who thinks he's all that, because Ventress knows, I'm better. Anakin, he is like, you are bad and I am going to destroy you. His face says it. He's on the warpath where it's raining and it's hitting their lightsabers and it's sizzling, and that's all you hear for a moment. Isn't that a tense scene? And did you notice there's no dialogue? But it's so intense that you're like this. You're waiting. You're holding your breath, actually. When I watched it again, I was like, oh man, this is better than I thought, Because I always liked the battle, but then I realized, like, he's not telling words. He's telling a story without words. That's incredible. Tartakovsky really blew me away. Now again, I've never seen Samurai Jack. I don't know if those elements were in some of his previous works, but I'll be honest, his Clone Wars stuff, and someone correct me if I'm wrong here, I think that may be his finest project he's ever done. If he's done better, let me know. I think I'd be interested in checking him out, because the way he treated the Clone Wars was with respect. Filoni gets a lot of hate because his Clone Wars was generated more for kids. And yeah, that's obvious with the inclusion of Ahsoka and about half their episodes, right? They did have some good episodes that were good for adults too. But, they did pander to children. Tartakovsky goes, look, you can have a cartoon series that can involve kids can get excited about it, but it doesn't have to pander to them. And you can still keep the quality for both sides. Because I'll be honest, my little nephews love the cartoon Clone Wars, so it holds well for kids. And Tartakovsky knew, I believe he knew the right balance to do that. But that scene with Ventress and Anakin fighting, fantastic, that whole episode. Another great episode. I mean, there's a billion great episodes to choose from. Another character that they did well, and everyone knows this, everyone talks about it, and it's true, General Grievous. General Grievous is menacing. In Filoni's Clone Wars, I talked about how he's clunky, he's almost comical at times. He can't even beat Ahsoka twice, okay? I mean, he's just inept at everything, is what we get. And so, again, chronologically, if you're watching Clone Wars, Filoni's Clone Wars first, before Episode 3, you're like, Yeah, there's General Grievous. He has no chance. Oh, he's going to fight Obi-Wan again for the 3rd time. Yeah, whatever. We've seen Obi-Wan beat him, and he always runs away from Obi-Wan in the Clone Wars series. Yeah, but if you go back and you just watch Tartakovsky's Clone Wars, man, Grievous is scary. Everyone knows the episode. It was the season finale for Season 1, where they introduced Grievous for the first time to Star Wars fans, and how menacing it was. You heard the metal clamps of his feet. You heard the pounding, the click-a-click, the chatter. You saw the terror on all the Jedi's face, right? Because they're cornered by all these droids, but they hear Grievous coming. And he killed a billion of them. Stomped on one guy when he came out and panicked, and then was just killing everyone. He killed a ton of people in the Clone Wars, Tartakovsky's Clone Wars. He bent in different shapes and used his lightsabers in different ways. I had never seen anything like that before, and I was like, whoa, this guy is super scary. I was super excited to see him in Episode 3, and kind of disappointed that he wasn't all that from Tartakovsky's Clone Wars, because Tartakovsky really builds him up as this menacing force. I mean, he is someone, how do you stop this guy? And think about it. If you're watching Tartakovsky's Clone Wars, and you see, you know, Grievous just cutting down tons of Jedi with tons of lightsabers. He can face anyone. And now you get to Episode 3, and he's about to face Obi-Wan. And he's got all these lightsabers and they're spinning around. You get a little nervous, don't you? I know I used to love that scene in Episode 3, and when I'd watched the Clone Wars, because remember, Filoni's Clone Wars didn't exist back then, so all we had was Tartakovsky's Clone Wars. And me, I was like, okay, here it comes. And I mean, that was intimidating. But imagine if I'd have gone back and it had been Filoni's Clone Wars instead we had to watch before Episode 3. Would we be that impressed with Grievous? No. No, we wouldn't. And if you say, oh no, I think I would, you need to rewatch Filoni's Clone Wars. Grievous is basically a joke. Like I said, he can't even beat a Padawan. So yeah, Obi-Wan's going to tear him alive. We all know that. But in Tartakovsky's Clone Wars, he is a menacing force, and he's dangerous. You're almost like, run, Obi! Run! He's Obi-Run. That was cheesy. Another character that I liked that was just in Tartakovsky's Clone Wars, well, he was in a few comic books too, was Dirge. Dirge the Bounty Hunter was a great character. Here they made a character who could stand up to a Jedi because he could, you know, regenerate, or his limbs would come back together once you chopped him off. It's like he couldn't die. So it's a good way of making a villain and not making him a Jedi, because how do you go against a Jedi unless it's with another Jedi, you know, unless it's with the Sith or something. That's why Ventress was around, and Darth Maul was brought back, and Savage, and all these other people, because you had to have someone who could fight a Jedi. Well, Tartakovsky figured out a great idea to have a bounty hunter that's very menacing, that's a trouble for the Jedi. You know, someone that just keeps, you know, his arms just keep coming back together and his head comes back together. You can't destroy him. How do you do that? You can only stop him. And it made for a very scary character. In fact, while watching it, I was like, how do you beat this guy? They've made him too powerful. And then in the comic books, which we'll get to later on, dealt with him in a great way, gave him a great ending. But Dirge in Tartakovsky's Clone Wars is what a bounty hunter needs to be. Let me contrast against Filoni's Clone Wars. First off, his two throwaway, well, he wasn't really a bounty hunter, but Hondo not the pirate. Yeah, I hated him. I thought he was stupid. I mean, he was used for comedic, you know, reasons, but I didn't really like him that much. He wasn't really a villain in my book. And then Cad Bane, who I actually like Cad Bane. I think he's really cool. But I also think he doesn't stand a chance against Jedi. And every time he got the upper hand on Jedi, I was going, what? I just didn't see where Cad Bane could be that awesome. I know they're trying to make him better than Boba Fett, and I don't think anyone would say he was better than Boba Fett. But Cad Bane, to me, whenever they had him in an episode, I knew he wasn't going to win because he's Cad Bane. Even when they first introduced him, he was really awesome. His introductory episode was just too cool. But I knew this guy is no threat to the Jedi. Dirge, on the other hand, a huge threat to the Jedi. How did the Jedi beat him? I don't even know. And that's the difference. I think Tartakovsky said, okay, if we're going to have a bounty hunter, we need to make him menacing and someone who can stand up to people who use the Force. And that's what you got with Dirge, another great character. But above all, one of the greatest character developments they did was with Anakin. For two reasons. One, you got to see Anakin and Obi-Wan in a couple of scenes together. The one I remember the best is when they're hunkered down in that bunker. They've been there for like weeks. They're just eating worms. Obi-Wan's eating worms. It's raining. Those type of moments are the type of moments that form friendships forever. And to me, that makes more sense than Filoni's Clone Wars. Filoni's Clone Wars really didn't have that many moments with Obi-Wan and Anakin. Sure, they shared some adventures together, but they weren't always together in those adventures, right? Obi-Wan's up in space, Anakin's on the ground, or vice versa, or they're on separate missions, or Ahsoka's in the middle, and you can't really bond with each other when there's a third person in the room, you know? That's not what really forms bonding moments. Now, war does form bonding moments. We all know that. Look at some of the old stories from World War II vets, you know, who still meet together and they live miles away because they what was it, the TV show Band of Brothers on HBO. They actually had some interviews before and after those episodes and saying that probably the thing that, you know, brought them together the closest was the nights they were hunkered down in Warsaw in the winter, and how that really just bonded them together. And anyone who came after that really felt like an outsider. Even if they were before the group, before that winter, they got injured, were gone for the winter, came back in the spring, and those people were like, you're not one of us now. We bonded. So war bonds, makes bonds, makes friendships. And I just feel that in that episode, Tartakovsky really just nailed it. Filoni, I saw some fun moments where they were friends and comrades and they had good times, but I never saw a moment like that where they could share it and you could say, this is why they're so close when we get to episode 3. I just didn't see that. Another thing he did smart with Anakin, and this was just brilliant, I didn't even notice this until the second time I watched the series, but it was that second to the last episode of season 2 where he and Obi-Wan are on a planet and they're saving a tribe where all the males have disappeared. And, you know, Anakin goes off to save them. Now, Obi-Wan says, hey, this is going to count as your Jedi Trials, since you never had the trials, because he got elevated to the status of Knight all of a sudden in that Clone Wars series. If you think about it, that Tartakovsky's Clone Wars showed us a lot of things. You know, Anakin becoming a Knight and whatnot, and growing into the man he would be come episode 3. So that story arc is beautiful. But at the end, this is key. Obi-Wan says this can be your trials, your Jedi trials. Now think about this, because Anakin's a chosen one. He probably grew up a little bit hated, a little spurned by the other Padawans because he had special privileges. He got to come in late, automatically got a master, you know, was good at everything. You get a little bit of that in Jedi Quest, which I'm going through right now, and I'll talk more about that later. But so Anakin basically has a chip on his shoulder. He has something to prove. And sure, he got elevated in a time of war, where everyone else had to go through the trials. They didn't have time for him. Well, now it's another thing that everyone can say, you're not really a Jedi. You didn't even go through the trials. You're shortcutting your way to the top. So in Anakin's mind, this is a test for him to prove to himself, to Obi-Wan, and to all other Jedi that he deserves to be there. If you don't remember this episode, I'll kind of skip over the basics here, but he does, of course, win, and he falls to the dark side a little bit to win, right? He uses the dark side. And it's different. This story is different than every other Anakin story, you know, falling to the dark side. We have several episodes, and some in Filoni's Clone Wars too, where Anakin's by himself, right? And he has to make a decision, and sometimes it's not the right decision. And those are great stories, and I love those stories, and it shows us, you know, he's going to be Darth Vader one day. But what Tartakovsky does better than anyone else, and I just noticed this past year, was that he takes Anakin's story, and as Anakin falls to the dark side, what happens? He saves the day. He comes back as a hero. Obi-Wan congratulates him and tells him he passed his trial. Now think of the impact there, because it's monumental. And I used to not like those episodes, but when I first saw them, I was like, boring. You know, I didn't know what the symbolism was. Now I get it. Because think about it. Anakin had to use the dark side to save people. And so in his head, he's like, okay, yeah, I shouldn't have gone to the dark side, but everyone's treating me as a hero. So sometimes the dark side's okay to use. You see where this thought process is going now? Like, it's how I pass my trials. Obi-Wan's happy with me. Yeah. And I'm the chosen one, so I could probably work with the dark side from time to time. I'm all about the good side. I'm all about being good, you know, but sometimes you got to pick up that stick and use it. And I'm the chosen one, why not? I can restore balance to the Force, so I should be able to use both. I can see where the process is coming in, the thinking. It's almost like a drug addict. It's like, oh yeah, I can do these drugs. They won't affect me because I'm better than these drug addicts. You know, I'm not a drug addict. I just try them out whenever I feel like it. And then eventually, the dark side, just like drugs, are too tempting and it can suck you in. It is a beautiful, beautiful symbolism going on in that episode that I didn't see the first time through. And so if you think about it, watching episode 3, and this is what I got to thinking about, I said, this makes a whole lot more sense. Because Anakin knows sometimes you got to use the dark side, like Count Dooku at the very beginning of episode 3. Or maybe when he wants to kill Palpatine, but he knows he needs him because he needs the dark side to save Padme. And why is he that you're thinking, that's stupid. Why would you think that way? You're thinking backwards, Anakin. No, it started in that Tartakovsky Clone Wars episode, where sometimes you have to use the dark side to get the job done. And that, if you look at that series and you use that particular episode, Anakin over in episode 3, the first time I saw episode 3, I thought, man, Anakin just flip-flops too fast. But then, as I saw that episode, I said, oh, it makes sense now. So that, to me, is a huge reason why Genndy Tartakovsky's Clone Wars is so good, and I think superior than Dave Filoni's Clone Wars. Another thing to note is that George Lucas is credited as the writer of every single episode of this 3-season series. And yet, it's not part of the new canon, which is kind of wild. It seems like he had, well, credit-wise, he had more involvement than in the other Clone Wars, where he just kind of like looked at the ideas. In Filoni's Clone Wars, it was just like the EU. He just signed off on and tweaked a few ideas for episodes, as he did for books and comic books. But in Genndy Tartakovsky's Clone Wars, he's credited as the writer, so I'm guessing George wrote them all, or at least that's what it says online. So I think it's kind of sad that this series didn't even get that new canon status as the other series did, because it is truly a wonderful series. Alright folks, so there is my review. Tell me what you think. Is there stuff that you liked? Episodes you loved? Tell me about it. And I will see you next week with more videos.